Ezra Levant here at Davos, Switzerland. I mentioned in an earlier video that one of the things about Davos is it's like a kind of trade show or a World's Fair. And many countries and regions of the world have pavilions or booths where they put their best foot forward. They're trying to seek investment or push a political point of view or really just attract attention to themselves. We saw Mongolia earlier, not a country that a lot of people think about. I put it to you, and they're sort of on a goodwill trip. Well, Ukraine obviously has a very specific mission ever since Russia invaded it in 2022. That is to put the Ukrainian case forward, and in some cases to demonstrate some shocking facts. I come here every year, and I spend a fair bit of time here because I want to make sure I know the Ukrainian point of view, the Ukrainian side of the story. It's very difficult to get the facts in the fog of war, whether it's casualties from soldiers or collateral damage, civilian damage, which is always a factor in war. And so I spent some time here and I listen to the curator. I'd say it's as much an artistic expression as a political one. In the past, they've documented atrocities. They talk about, for example, attacks on civilians. So we're going to be here and we're going to get the Ukraine side of the story, and hopefully we'll get a curator or another expert to walk us around as has happened in recent years. Let's take a look. What's your name?
My name is Nick Bagorski.
And you were saying a moment ago that you actually don't live in Ukraine. You're from California, I think.
I'm living in California now at Stanford. 10 years ago, I founded Nova Ukraine, which is one of the charities helping Ukraine globally. We're a 10-year-old company which has 4,000 volunteers and raised $140 million and became one of the largest provider of help, humanitarian aid, education support, cultural support in Ukraine.
And it looks like you have a medal as well. What's that medal for?
For providing medical aid in Ukraine. This was something some volunteers brought from Ukraine and just gave me. But I also have an award, a state award from President Zelensky for this work.
Now, I understand that President Zelensky has spoken here at Davos. I just arrived this morning. Can you give us a bit of a summary of what he said?
From my understanding, he spoke yesterday. He spoke on the importance of European countries increasing their defense budget spending. He said that the world has changed and Russia is a really real big threat. And it's European priority to protect themselves from Russia and to protect Ukraine and to be responsible allies and increase defense spending.
Now, Donald Trump famously said he could end the war in one day. Obviously, that hasn't happened, but I think both President Zelensky and President Putin have expressed interest in hearing President Trump's plan, and it sounds like they are open-minded in participating in some sort of negotiated solution. Does that accurately reflect Ukraine's position?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of Ukraine's position, but as an American resident and somebody who is passionate about Ukrainian cause, I can tell you that the ceasefire cannot come soon enough. What we need is lasting peace and a fair peace. And I'm happy to see Trump and Zelensky talking about how to make that happen. What is missing is the desire for Putin to come to the table and negotiate. So what I expect will happen is we'll need further sanctions on Russia to bring them to the negotiating table, and then some kind of agreement can be hammered out. But I'm not positive that will happen this year.
Now, you said you want a ceasefire soon. I think that
I want it soon because I want to stop the loss of life. On the other hand, I want to make sure that that's not a capitulation for Ukraine.
well, and that's the thing. I've heard some people on the Ukrainian side say that a ceasefire could freeze the borders where they are. Uh, Now, by the way, Ukraine has an incursion into Kursk, which is a Russian province. So who knows what a ceasefire would mean there. If there were to be a ceasefire, it might be a de facto border. What do you think about that?
I have no comment on that. I don't know.
Well, are you optimistic? I mean, do you think that Trump will bring peace faster than Biden and Harris, who I guess they didn't bring peace? Do you think Trump will achieve his goal of some sort of negotiated peace?
I can't say that I'm optimistic about Trump. I feel like his priority is internal in United States. It's immigration, and it's drilling oil and other things. As someone who's passionate about Ukraine, I want to see continued aid to Ukraine, both financial and military. And this is not something I expect Trump will provide. So I think that will come more on the shoulders of Europe and Japan and other allies of Ukraine. So I hope that whatever Trump does will not hurt too much, but I'm not super optimistic.
I have one last question, and it's about sanctions. I think that the sanctions didn't have the effect that many Western governments thought they would. Russia managed to find a customer in China. The Russian economy, obviously the sanctions hurt, but hasn't devastated the economy. You say more sanctions might help. What kind of sanctions?
Well, like you said, the key thing is to plug the holes that allow them to circumvent the sanctions. And specifically, I would love to see secondary sanctions on countries that do business with Russia, who buy oil or gas from Russia. I think that will really move the needle on hurting Russian economy and making them come to the negotiation table.
It's nice talking with you, and I hope peace comes. I note that you're calling for a ceasefire. Some other people who are pro-Ukraine, when you mention a ceasefire, they take that as capitulation.
I want lasting peace. I want fair peace. I want what President Zelensky said he wants, right? He doesn't want to give up any territory. He wants to make sure that Ukraine still has a path to NATO. But if we need a ceasefire to get there, I would be supportive of that.
Great talking with you, and I hope peace comes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you know what this is? Oh my God, I just understand it now, the balloon and the knives. That's terrifying. Well, it's very symbolic, isn't it? Wow, it's when you think about that installation, that's incredibly dramatic. What's interesting about that gentleman is that he's expressed an interest in ceasefire. I've heard from other people that a ceasefire is a kind of surrenderism. And in fact, I remember under the Biden administration, National Security and Department of State spokesman said a ceasefire was unacceptable precisely because that would lock in the border, which would lock in Russian gains. I wonder where the mood of the Ukrainian government is now.
That if coming out of this meeting, there's some sort of call for a ceasefire, well, that's just going to be unacceptable, because all that's going to do, Mike, is ratify Russia's conquest to date. All that's going to do is give Mr. Putin more time to refit, retrain, reman, and try to plan for renewed offensives at a time of his choosing. We hope, and we've said this before, that President Xi will call and talk to President Zelensky, because we believe the Chinese need to get the Ukrainian perspective here.
Mm-hmm. Here's an explanation for that fascinating artwork, the world on a knife's edge, with the possibility of being plunged into uncertainty and chaos. What's interesting is the political persuasion in the Ukraine Pavilion. They know a lot of the world's VVIPs are passing through, and they want to make their best case. On the wall here, you can see statements by three of the world's authoritarian rulers: Kim Jong-un of North Korea, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, and Ali Khamenei, the leader of Iran. The message here is that the war on Ukraine and the re-engineering of global structures is something that tyrants like, and that how Ukraine goes will either support or undermine these leaders. The clear message being, these guys want Ukraine to lose. This is the third year in a row I've come to the Ukraine Pavilion, and every year the artistic installation is a little bit different. And what's very interesting to me is that the messaging on the wall here is clearly tailored to the new U.S. President, Donald Trump, who was sworn in just days ago. Let me read a little bit of this to you, clearly engineered with an American audience in mind. An America First approach to end this conflict. First, provide Ukraine with a military armament. Second, identify an end state for how this war will end. Third, push our allies to do more. That phrase, America First, obviously is not a Biden message. It's not a Harris message. It's a Donald Trump message. And the purpose of the pavilion is to assist Ukraine in making its case to the VIPs who pass through Davos. I find the artwork here compelling, and I find the messaging very compelling. And they know their stuff. They know their audience. And in 2025, that audience is Donald Trump. Well, that's my third visit to the Ukraine Pavilion. Hopefully there won't be a Ukraine Pavilion next year about the war, but hopefully there'll be one about peace. Obviously, the question is very passionate. It's likely that a negotiated outcome with Vladimir Putin on the other side of the bargaining table will likely result in Ukraine losing some of the territory, if not all of the territory, that Russia has devoured over the last 3 years. But that's the thing about peace, you have to negotiate it with your enemy. And the plain facts are Russia has 3 times the population and 10 times the military of Ukraine. They are inexorably grinding down. And although casualties are high on both sides, the sheer mass and number on the Russian side means that although both sides are losing in this war, I think that Russia has more staying power. It's bad news. It's a terrible thing. This war should never have started. In fact, that was the message that Donald Trump just released yesterday in a public statement on Truth Social. If you can see it here, he's saying that this war is madness and it would not have happened under his watch. I think that's accurate. There was an invasion of Ukraine before Trump was president. It happened in 2014, and an invasion of Ukraine after he was president in 2022, during the Obama and Biden years. Putin wouldn't have tried it during Trump's tenure. I hope that peace comes to Ukraine and that that country can rebuild. But of course, in the end, there will be no winners in that war. For Rebel News at the World Economic Forum, I'm Ezra Levance. We're here in Davos, Switzerland for the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. If you find our reports interesting, you can learn more at wefreports.com. And if you feel moved to support us, please help us crowdfund the cost of our trip.